This is what makes women's basketball so fire.
I mean, I just love playing the game. It's fun.
To see how far the game has grown has been amazing.
Okay, they say nobody watching. That's a lot of people. There's a lot of people in there, Martin.
Yeah, I think I've always just been able to get downhill.
When recess came, I had my sneakers on.
I hit them with a hezzy. After that, they quit.
Protect our queens.
This is what makes women's basketball so.
Top of the morning. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Protect Our Queens podcast presented by Basketball Society. Martin Stories with me as always, my guy. How we feeling today?
Good morning. It is the morning. You may not be watching this in the morning, but we are live this Monday morning, fresh off of Selection Sunday. Feeling good. Always feels good to talk some basketball, talk some women's basketball first thing in the morning here on the Protect Our Queens podcast on Basketball Society. Good to be here, man. But it's allergy season. I just got over like a little bit of sickness, but I'm starting to realize that it's the allergy season kicking in. So I'm still, if you hear me sniffling or have to mute my mic to sneeze or something, that's what's going on. The allergy season is not playing already.
Yeah, it is that time of year. I'm surprised I haven't gotten sick yet. Maybe I should knock on some wood somewhere so that I don't end up getting sick. The ginger flowing. Get on it early and be proactive. Might need to go buy a case of ginger ale and keep it in the fridge for the rest of the week. You were in Atlantic City the other day this weekend. How was March Madness is in full swing. Yeah. The Marist Red Foxes starting point guard is my cousin who I've trained since he was a young one. They lost in the first round, unfortunately, but they'll be back next year. Yeah. But yeah, Atlantic City always an interesting time. Don't want to stay there too long. Not a place you stay too long, very much like Vegas. But the MAC tournament does a nice job there with that venue. So didn't end up staying that long. Well, stayed an extra day after they lost just to decompress and chill out a little bit. But it wasn't a long trip, unfortunately. Yeah. Well, as Martin said, we are going to be reacting to Selection Sunday. Selection Sunday was last night. The field of 68 for this year's Women's March Madness tournament is set. And so we're going to do a couple reactions to that, not do a full breakdown. We're going to talk about some of our sleeper teams and favorite potential matchups across all four regions. Before we get into that, though, let's toss it back to a clip of me at the end of last season. This is no longer the Revenge Tour. Revenge Tour is complete. Now we're on the repeat tour. And I'm going to be honest. I know it's way too early. I know it's April 9th. Season starts somewhere October, November. I don't know if there's a team in the country that's going to beat South Carolina next season or really pose a threat to prevent them from winning back-to-back championships, which is the one thing that's missing from Dawn Staley's illustrious resume is the back-to-back championship. I think she'll get it next season. This is no longer the Revenge Tour. Revenge Tour is complete. Now we're on the repeat tour. And lots of bold words there from me. I feel like that's what I do at this point is just say a bunch of stuff. Let's start with Region 1. Obviously, South Carolina is not the number one overall seed. They do have the 1 seed in the second region, but this is Spokane Region 1. UCLA secured the number 1 overall seed in the country. They have the number 1 seed in this region, and there are a lot of interesting teams placed in this region. Martin, we'll start with sleepers first. Is there a sleeper team for you out of Spokane Region 1 out here where UCLA is at?
So I think Florida State, everyone's going to probably be looking at them as a potential sleeper because they have the country's leading scorer in Tanaya Latson. They have a big win against Notre Dame recently. And that's a common theme for me when I look at sleepers or teams that can get hot, because that's what this tournament can be about, is like getting hot at the right time. So if you have an individual flamethrower, as we like to call them, I usually look at your team a little more closely to see what kind of damage you can do, because it is about getting hot. So when you have a scorer like Tanaya Latson, on your side, then you have to look at them as a potential sleeper. And they're already asking Kim Mulkey about her. She's like, hey, I want to just get past San Diego State. Let me study San Diego State tonight. I don't even want to think about Tanaya Latson yet. So people, I mean, the country is well aware of her. When you have a scorer like that, you never know what can happen. Just starting to do a little research and look around at different teams and different players and what people are saying about teams. Apparently Ball State has a young lady by the name of Allie Becky who has been special at the mid-major level. She was the MAC player of the year and the defensive player of the year. And towards the end of the season, she became just the 8th player in women's basketball history to score over 1,500 points, grab over 700 rebounds, and tally over 650 assists. And she's the only player out of those 8 players that came from a mid-major program. By the way, Dawn Staley was on that list too, by the way. But Allie Becky, just from starting to watch a little bit of footage, she plays fast. She shoots the ball. She's a flamethrower. So when you look at Ball State, again, as a sleeper candidate, possibly a team that most people probably don't know about, Allie Becky, only people in the mid majors know about her name ringing loud right now. But again, based on what I'm hearing and seeing, she's a historic flamethrower at that and playmaker. And so I kind of just have them circled. Haven't watched them play yet, but just doing my due diligence, looking around. That could be a sleeper. I think there's a 10 seed here that should be a sleeper for you, based on you educating us throughout the season.
Absolutely. A couple months ago, I had the distinct pleasure of issuing an apology publicly on Instagram to Harmony Turner for not being familiar with her game. And since then, she's made me feel really, really smart with how great she's been. You talk about a flamethrower. Harvard has that. In Harmony Turner, she has been one of the more dynamic and more prolific guards in the country, especially down the stretch of the season. Harvard, I think what's interesting about them as well is they are obviously one of 3 teams that coming out of the Ivy League to make it into the tournament, which I believe is the most in the Ivy League's history up to this point. The Ivy League has gotten better, right? So like, it's not just a matter of like, this is like an Ivy League school that just happens to sneak in. Like, they've had some really great wins against some really solid teams in the Ivy League and mid-major programs. Early on in the season, they had an overtime win against Indiana. And it was a tight one. It was 72-68, I believe. I think that Harvard, led by Harmony Turner, is a team that you can't just discount because of the 10 seed, right? I personally think they probably could have been ranked higher. Although when you look at their quadrant, you're talking about Michigan State, you're talking about NC State, you're talking about Vermont as well. I think their first round matchup is very winnable. And I know, you and I are both, for various reasons, particularly high on NC State, but I wouldn't look at that game, a potential matchup between Harvard and NC State, as just a shoe-in of a victory for NC State because of the strength, just based off the strength of who Harmony Turner is as a basketball player and what she's done this season. So it'll be nice to see. It'll be nice to see them in the tournament and see what they can do. But I have high hopes for them. I definitely think that they could pull off the upset against Michigan State and at least win their first round matchup. So I'm super excited for that. I know that we define sleepers as teams who are ranked 1 through 3. I've heard a lot of great things about Baylor and seen a lot of good things about Baylor on Twitter, especially down the stretch of their season as well. They did have a couple of tight games, so that's another team I'll probably be keeping an eye on. But the big one for me, obviously, out of this first region in Spokane, is Harvard and Harmony Turner. Very excited to watch that first round matchup later on this week. Is there a matchup or two for you that sticks out, especially in this region as well?
I mean, I think, the health of LSU is a big question mark for me because I think, they can create some really dope matchups. I mean, LSU, NC State could be fun. Baylor, UCLA could be fun. This is a good region, but I think UCLA has a strong chance of making it out of here. I think NC State can cause issues again. Again, the health of LSU, you mentioned Baylor. They do have some good players, good coach. Like they could make some noise, but I don't see too spicy of like good matchups like NC State, LSU. That could be dope. But I don't know. I Florida State, like I said, as a sleeper, Tanaya Latson going up against LSU, that could be fun. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know if I see like marquee matchups potentially happening here.
Sure. Let's move over then to Birmingham, Region 2, where my South Carolina Gamecocks have the #1 overall seed, the #2 overall in the tournament. There are a lot of interesting potential matchups here, and I know we'll talk about that in a second. Sleeper for me coming out of this region, again, I know that we define sleepers as 1 through 3, so I'm going to show some love to Maryland a little bit. I think that them being able to host in the tournament is going to be big for them. I will say that the Maryland, the only thing about Maryland that gives me a little bit of pause is that they are a little bit inconsistent, right? Like when we had the show last Friday, when I said that, or was that last Friday? No, Friday before last, I think, when I said that they're going to win the Big Ten tournament, then they lost a couple hours after we got off the air. So that was a tough pill to swallow for sure. But this is still a really good Maryland team, a team that up until recently has dominated the Big Ten. There's championship pedigree. Obviously, you're talking about head coach Brenda Freese, who I think is one of the 5 best coaches in the country for sure. Definitely on the top 7 coaches in the country. Definitely, not just based on this season, but also based on her body of work with her career in Maryland. So I'm definitely looking out for them. I'm also going to show some love to Oregon State. Oregon State lost a lot of their offensive production from last season with Talia Van Olhoffen transferring and Reagan Beers transferring. They still found a way to win the West Coast Championship and punch their ticket to the dance as well. And that matchup against North Carolina, I believe, is a rematch of last year at some point. And I'm very interested to see, them continue their stretch and see how far they can go in the tournament as well. But those are really the two that I'm looking at as like potential sleepers that we could see maybe make it to like the Elite Eight. Definitely 2 teams that I'd expect to see in the Sweet 16 for sure.
I'm going with 2 teams that feature girls who we've had on the show, friends of the show. I'm always gonna advocate for my girl Diamond Johnson, Norfolk State. She's back dancing again, 3 years in a row, winning that conference. She just went there and dominated for 3 straight years, and this will be her last time out dancing. And so I expect her to play well. And, you talk about Maryland's inconsistency sometimes. They probably have the more talented roster, but matchup wise, I see them having trouble with Diamond there in the first round. And then Vanderbilt, at number 7, Michaela Blake's SEC Freshman of the Year. I look at that first bunch of games for them. The fact that Vandy is in the SEC and they're SEC built and tested, they may not be built for the best in the SEC, which is South Carolina, but they come out of that conference where they've seen some of the best in the country. So Oregon, even Duke, North Carolina, like I think these are teams they might be able to compete with because they go hard and they have, one of the best, if not the best freshman in the country. And, the way Michaela Blake's has been brilliant and great this year, it's like it looks better than just freshmen. Like it's one thing, like, I know Michigan is a good team that you've seen a little this year, and they're like really built on multiple freshmen.
Yeah.
But like the way Michaela goes, it feels like she's gonna be ready to go in the tournament. It's not gonna look like a freshman out there. So and they give her full confidence and freedom and that way too. And her running mate, Camille Pierre, she's just as good, if not better. So Vanderbilt, coming out of the SEC, I think they're easily, they can easily be a sleeper.
For sure. I mean, Michaela Blake's and Camille Pierre combined for 44 points per game, which I believe is they were the highest scoring duo in the country, I think, is what I heard last night when they were revealing the various seedings and things. And that is a good team. I mean, that's obviously a good team. That's definitely a team that we could see come out of their portion of the bracket. Are there any other matchups for you that you look out that's like potential matchups for you that stick out as could be good ones if we're able to get them?
I mean, I do. I look forward to seeing what Duke can do. You got a potential Duke North Carolina matchup coming there, which could be, for obvious reasons, that could be fun. Yeah, I think whatever team is going to get a chance to get a crack at South Carolina, I don't know which team, honestly. Maybe Duke, but I'm not totally sold there. Like if Maryland can kind of play to their potential, they might be the best matchup against North Carolina in this region.
For sure. I agree. I don't think I mean, I think you look at a potential Vanderbilt matchup with South Carolina, again, just because they've played each other. They're in the same conference. There's familiarity there. So they might be, I guess, as far as like having done it before, probably more prepared. But I think matchup-wise, I would agree with you. I think Maryland would probably be the toughest challenge for South Carolina on this side of the bracket before they get to the Final Four and we start talking about, potentially punching the ticket to a championship and repeating. Before we move into the next two regions, let's throw it back to a clip of you from last week talking about Juju and Hannah.
The way things are going, Marcus, I've been an advocate all year for my girl Hannah as the front runner for National Player of the Year. I think her case is solidified, and frankly, a little forgotten what she did because it was earlier in the season, but she beat and outplayed Paige and Juju head to head. Juju lately has been playing more like a National Player of the Year, and people seem to be quick to want to just give her that. But I keep reminding them, I'm like, hey, don't forget about Hannah, not just because she's also great, but because she beat her and outplayed her head to head. Hannah missed a few games. Numbers have been a little down. Juju's been going up. So I think now it's a little more of an even race. And this won't solve that, but I just think with that dynamic happening and right in front of us, and the fact that we only saw one matchup can only mean one thing. It feels like we need to see USC against Notre Dame in the national championship. Thank you to the committee for keeping my dream alive. I'm so pleased. I'm so pleased that my revelation could indeed come to pass.
Yeah, man.
Very exciting.
It will be tough for Notre Dame. They are the 3 seed in their region over here with Texas, who is the 1 seed. And that was to the shock of many, especially considering that Notre Dame was the number 1 team in the country about 3 weeks ago. When you look at this region number 3, obviously, again, sleepers, we're talking about teams that aren't 1 through 3. Are there any sleeper teams on this side for you that you're looking at that could disrupt some things and make some noise?
Yeah, I mean, Michigan, again, you saw them in person against Maryland this year, and Brenda Fries, really had some glowing comments about them. They have some special freshmen, including Silas Swords, who is like that. She is the real deal. So if you've seen Michigan, if you know about Michigan, you should take them seriously. They had a big upset in the Big Ten tournament. I can't remember who they beat. They beat somebody or came close to beating somebody. I think they played USC really well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm looking at Michigan. And then, I mean, Audie Crooks at Iowa State, she can always make a run with her dominance. They haven't been as good as a team this year, but they have another player. They have a guard who's pretty good. Her name escapes me right now, but Audie Crooks is as an 11 seed, like her inside presence is just something that can become an issue for anybody. She can dominate, and she led the Big 12 in scoring. So you got to watch out for her. And then my other sleeper would be Tennessee. I think they play fast. They led the SEC in scoring. They're athletic. They shoot threes. They have good players. Like, Tennessee is a team to take seriously, and they could even give that number 1 seed Texas some problems if they advance. I really like Tennessee in the way that they play. I think their style of play could really put people on notice in the tournament.
For sure. I think that, I just posted a reel maybe an hour before we came on saying that Tennessee or Ohio State will be the team that keeps Texas out of the Final Four. I think that Ohio State should be a team to look at. Obviously Tennessee as well. They'll likely end up matching up in the second round of the tournament here, or the third round of the tournament, the Sweet 16. And we'll kind of see how it goes from there. But I'm with you on Michigan. Silas Swords and Olivia Olson, they've been, again, amongst the best freshmen in the country. At that Michigan-Maryland game, I had a chance to talk to the coach, and she talked about how they're not just 2 of the best freshmen in the country, they're arguably 2 of the best players in the country. And as a scoring duo, they certainly rank towards amongst the top. They both rise to the occasion. There hasn't been a game this season where Silas Swords or Olivia Olson, playing up against like a big-time opponent, hasn't risen to the occasion and played big-time basketball. And so when we talk about, potential matchups that we might see, Michigan and Notre Dame is certainly the first one that my eyes just kind of naturally gravitated to in this region, because we're talking about a backcourt that we know is the best backcourt in the country. in Olivia Miles and Hannah Hidalgo versus a younger backcourt that in another 2-3 years very well could be the best backcourt in the country, in Olivia Olson and Silas Swords. Obviously, there's a bit of differences there, but definitely a matchup that, should it happen, will definitely be one to watch and one to keep a keen eye on. So I do think that Michigan, and for what it's worth, there was talk last night about whether or not this time off that Notre Dame has had after the early exit from the ACC tournament could help them kind of find their groove and get back to where they were before they kind of went on this slide. And so, maybe we see some of that coming out early in their game in the first round. But I think, again, that like a Notre Dame Michigan matchup is definitely a matchup to look out for. And it wouldn't be at all shocking to me, I think, if Michigan were to pull out the upset there, just because of, I've seen it with my own two eyes, but also we've seen in the course of the season, Olivia Olson and Silas Swords, they rise to the occasion when it's time to play a big game. And that would certainly be a big game for them in the tournament.
Yeah. And if higher seeds do prevail, and looking ahead even more to another matchup that would be noted is if Notre Dame goes against TCU, with TCU having beaten them in December. One of their 5 or 6 losses on the season, whatever it is. But TCU, has a big in Sedona Prince and any, teams with post presence, even though Notre Dame, they've beaten teams with good posts. They beat Texas this year. But that's been the big question mark. I mean, as much as I love Notre Dame, I love Hannah, I love Olivia, I talk them up, I'm a fan. I may not talk about it often, but I've said it enough where my concerns, I mean, they still have question marks inside.
Yep.
And so, that if you're looking at what weaknesses for them, that's clearly been one of their weaknesses. They've overcome that with excellent guard play and wing play and excellent coaching too, of course. And they've had big step up. Kate Koval has played well in moments. They've had some decent play, but that is one of their weaknesses. And so that's where TCU really took advantage of them in December, because they have a really good big in Sedona Prince, really good guard in Haley Van Lith. TCU, obviously not as a sleeper because they're a 2 seed. And by the way, I wish I literally spent so much time trying to find this stat that they put up at the end of Selection Sunday last night, but it's a very telling stat, because even as we're saying sleepers outside of the top 3 seeds, it was a crazy stat about like the last 40, like all 42 national champions have been all 3, like no lower than a 3 seed. And then it was like 80 something, in the high 80% of national champions have been 1 seeds. Like, so when you look at the history of this thing, like there's not a lot of like 4 seeds and 6 seeds coming out and winning the national championship. Even if you look at the last decade, you're seeing a lot of familiar names: South Carolina, UConn, Baylor, so TCU as a 2 seed may not be a sleeper, but TCU doesn't have historic success. So you look at the year Haley Van Lith has had, she has a chance to play against one of her former schools in Louisville in the second round. This could be an interesting Haley Van Lith continued arc story, because that team is legit. She's legit. They tried to tell me she just wasn't that good at LSU, and I tried to tell them it was the coaching, nothing against Kim Mulkey, but clearly they didn't know how to use that girl within that system. And it's a shame, because they could have won back-to-back national championships if they knew what they were doing with her. So, TCU, that story with Haley could be interesting, and them getting to play Notre Dame again, and Notre Dame getting another crack at them could be interesting in this region.
For sure, 100%. Last region, Spokane, Region 4. Obviously, USC got the final 1 seed in this region. And UConn is the 2 seed. Who's your sleeper in this? Who are your sleepers or your sleeper in this region?
It's Iowa for me. I've talked about them a good amount on the show throughout the year, how I think they're still really good. They're still really good, and I think they've shown it throughout the year. They beat USC. They have a legit flamethrower in Lucy Olson, and they play together. They have 2 good bigs. They run the floor. They play together. They can hit threes, and they're still well coached. So I'm looking at Iowa, man. I think like an Iowa-UConn matchup could be fun. I know Oklahoma is legit with Reagan Beers. Iowa is my big sleeper in this region. I really think they play better basketball than people realize.
I'm going to go with Kentucky here. I spent a lot of time taking a look in Kentucky. The big thing that I've been saying about USC this entire season is if they match up against a well-coached team, it would take a generational performance from Juju Watkins in order for them to win. And we've seen some of that down the stretch of the season. Kentucky's a well-coached team. They're led by, obviously, Georgia Amore, who is a draft prospect this year. She transferred from Virginia Tech with her head coach, whose name is Kenny Brooks, who has done a great job in Kentucky. Another team just like Vanderbilt, who is coming from an SEC conference that I believe the SEC has put in the most teams in the tournament this year. And so they're battle tested and they're ready. And they have a big down low in Clara Strack, who, when Liz Kitley went down last season, played big minutes for Virginia Tech in the conference tournament and in the game or two they had in March Madness as well. And she's a sophomore and she's good. And so this is they're obviously not more talented than USC, right? They don't have the talent to overcome necessarily individually head-to-head a Juju Watkins or a Kiki Iriafen, but they're a well-coached basketball team and they have a system. Georgia Amore was newcomer of the year for the SEC, and rightfully so. And she's a fantastic basketball player. And I'm looking forward to, hopefully, assuming seeding prevailed, I'm looking forward to the USC-Kentucky matchup, because I think that will be USC's, might not be their toughest matchup. California might give them a little bit of trouble, maybe, but it will be a really tough matchup for them. And it would be the matchup.
Iowa beat USC. We didn't see any of the teams you're talking about beat USC.
They didn't. I know, but South Carolina has to get through Kentucky before they would even see Iowa because they're on the bottom. That's what I'm saying. Like, I think Kentucky could cause them some problems, but Southern California, USC would have a tough time beating Iowa or UConn should they meet in the Elite Eight. And those are obviously potential matchups as well, but they'd have to get through Kentucky first. And I think Kentucky could give them some problems, genuinely.
Yeah, I'm glad that UConn is in this region with USC. That's another I mean, that's the big matchup that we want to see out of here, especially after their matchup in December and USC squeaked out the win. UConn, man, let's be very aware of what they might be able to do in this tournament. You look at what they did to South Carolina a few weeks ago, and you look at the fact that they lost to USC the way that they did. I think they have just enough motivation. And then it's Paige's last run. It's Paige's last run, man. Yep. We're about to get, all out basketball from Paige Beckers. Like, I don't know if she's going to go, crazy flame throwing like Caitlin Clark. We talked about the differences in how they like approach and dominate the game. I think UConn is more built on like the sum of their parts. They're going to need Ashlyn Shade to hit shots. They're going to need Sarah Strong to be special. They're going to need AZ Fudd to hit shots. So it's not just about Paige, but and this is kind of like my final point and big takeaway from this tournament, because there are some big statements that are going to need to be made by certain players and certain teams. So like, I know you said like Juju against, it's not even, it's against any coach, bro. And I said this before, if Juju Watkins and USC is about to win the national championship, understand we are about to see a generational run individually from Juju Watkins, because we know that's how they win. That's how they function. That's how they operate, is off the back of Juju performances. So if they're about to make a Final Four national championship type of run, Juju's about to do some stuff we've never seen before, and she's about to go crazy. But you can say that about a few programs. So this is what I find interesting, right? Look at some of the top teams out here. UCLA, they won the AIAW national championship in 1978. They haven't been past the Elite Eight since. USC hasn't been to the Final Four since 1986. Texas hasn't been to the Final Four since 2004. So you look at Texas, very reliant on Madison Booker. She would need to have a major performance in this tournament for Texas to make a run. UCLA, they're kind of dependent on the sum of their parts, more of like a team, but on them, it's like proving that they can really be the best team. And, Lauren Betts, she's got to be a dominant force, but I'll say about UCLA, I don't think they do it unless Kiki Rice is the one to step up and show that that she can be one of the premier guards in the country, because I don't think that she's shown that up to this point or this season. And I don't know how much you remember or know about Kiki Rice coming out of high school. she was one of the biggest names nationally. I mean, I think she was like the national Gatorade Player of the Year. She's from out of your area in the DMV. Kiki Rice has yet to really live up to the hype of her name coming out of high school and college. She's having a great year. Her team's having a great year, and that's what's most important. But Kiki Rice has yet to really show, in my opinion, what her true talent really is. She's a big guard. She runs that team. She does a good job for them. But I look at her and she's got to be more of a difference maker, I think. So I think that's where UCLA and individually needs a statement. They need a statement type of performance. I mentioned with UConn, it's Paige's last run. You look at like UConn and South Carolina are really the two teams, and I left the part out. I was going to put it in from that clip because you had mentioned you made the prediction last year.
I did.
That it would be South Carolina, UConn in the national championship this year. I think that's very possible because those are the two teams that kind of feel the most prepared to win. Some of these other teams still feel like they have a lot to prove, and they would need like historic performances from their best player or from the team collectively to legitimately make a run here. And we're seeing South Carolina get themselves back to form. We know what UConn can do. We know Gino knows how to do this thing. So it's going to be interesting because I think some of these top teams really they have a lot to prove. And again, I think UConn, South Carolina is like kind of different from the rest of the field where other players and teams and individuals have to really make a statement here. But really, really interesting storylines across the board because if it's USC, it's going to be Juju. UConn is coming off, it's the momentum of Paige's last run. Texas is there, but they're still kind of iffy and young, but like Madison Booker is going to show people who she is and what she's about. Her name should start to ring louder a little bit in this tournament, win or lose. Notre Dame, people have their question marks, but like we know they have the best backcourt in the country. They've been the number one team, but a lot of teams have been the number one team this year. So there's just there's
been more different number one teams this season than any previous season, probably like combined. Like that's how crazy this season has been, I think. So yeah, you're right. You're right on that account for sure.
Should be very interesting, man. Very interesting. Whoever's going to do this thing is either going to be like the best team or they're going to have a generational player go generational on everybody.
What we should do is we should take that clip and submit it to the NCAA and get like one of those like playoff mixtapes that they usually put up behind it with like all the highlights and stuff, and just let that be the promo for the tournament this year because
they can afford it and they can afford me, so I could give them a nice little rate sheet for that. That ain't no problem. That ain't no problem.
I don't think they can ask for any actor that's barely tapped in to do it as well as you just did it there.
Thanks, man.
It's always a pleasure to talk women's basketball, especially early in the morning. For those of you guys who tapped in with us early this morning on a Monday, we appreciate you guys. For all of you guys who will be checking in later on over the course of the day, course of the week, what have you, we appreciate you guys for watching as well. Please don't forget to subscribe to Basketball Society for all things related to Protect Our Queens so you don't miss any future episodes. You can check in on any old episodes as well as short form content, shorts, reels, all that good stuff as well. And then head over to Instagram, follow us on Instagram at ProtectOurQueens_ and on Twitter at POQueens_ so you don't miss any of our content over there as well. So for my guy, Martin Sories of Basketball Society, this is Marcus of the Protect Our Queens podcast signing off. Thank you guys for watching. And as always, you guys enjoy yourselves some women's basketball.